Should be live, I think. Yes, pretty much. All right, just a little bit of bookkeeping, whatever, and such, so I can, see the chat. Although, yes, it doesn't often please me much. See the chat. It's part of the experience of live video, so. We'll see what it produces tonight. Alright, so the double slit experiment is the focus of this video, and all of the lies and distortions and exaggerations and nonsense that physics says this experiment represents. Feynman said something like, this represents the biggest mystery in, physics, and it's, it ain't all that, frankly. Okay, so if they actually look at the pattern, they could, and did the math, if they actually drew what their formula is simplifying. So formulas are just simplifications. They're a formalization of the important parts of some relationship. So if I throw something, the only part of the relationship that's interesting is the fact that this thing I throw will have an MV, and the MV will represent an exchange, an impact, and so you can formalize that. And so, yes, there's math that formalizes, the event of this experiment. Now, they cheat the experiment horribly because they'll say something like, we'll make the slits infinitesimally small. Why would you do that? You don't have to do that. There's no... You get more pattern if you don't, and that's the funny, ironic part, that you'll see more if you don't bother with that nonsense. All right, and so if you have open slits, that is, if you haven't ruined the experiment and changed the double slit into the single slit experiment, it's technically, if I make the slits infinitesimally small, maybe you can understand that two of these surfaces will now be very close to each other, so close that a photon can't even squeeze between them. And so if they were point sources, they would be the same point source. So if I would argue this should be called the four surface experiment, not the double slit. It's not about the openings, it's about the surfaces. And there's four surfaces. And essentially, if you make the slits infinitesimally small, then you've turned it into the two-surface experiment again. And that's what actually happens. Then they just pretend that the two-slit pattern is the four-slit pattern when it isn't. Okay, so if you have the slits open, the pattern you actually create will look something like, let's do 5 in the middle, then 3, and then 3. Okay, so it looks something like this. Very similar. And it all depends, for clarity, on whether or not you have these variables, more consistent with each other or less consistent. The more irregularities you have in this relationship between the width of this impediment and the width of the opening, the more you'll get kind of a sloppier pattern. But it'll be cleaner the more proportional your distances are, and it's all going to be just about distances. So if you just do their math basically says, okay, there's a distance, right? This is what they consider a variable, usually called A. And all you're going to do is say how many wavelengths fit in that distance, and then you're going to you're really just drawing vectors. And you're just saying there has to be a wavelength of difference in the length of the line between the two vectors, and that will decide whether it's on or off. So what you observe, if you just do this drawing of vectors from the distances between the surfaces, like I said, if it's a single slit, then this would be the A. So it's just the distance between surfaces. So you have 4 or 5 different, you can do this distance, you could do this distance, you could do this distance. But the point is there's only 4 sources. So you start drawing vectors from those 4 sources. And what you will find is that this vector and this vector, okay, will be an on for this entire length. So this is how big the node will be from these two sources. So any one of these two sources, these two, or these two, the pattern will be exactly that envelope pattern. It'll duplicate that. And the one in the middle is really just two nodes overlapping by one. And so, it's really easy to understand why that would happen, because the two sources are separated, the two experiments. One of them's got an arc going here, and one of them's got an arc going here, so they don't quite overlap. And so that's why you end up with a node in the middle that's somewhere around 2 widths or less. All right. So if you drew the lines from here and here, okay, again, this whole width would be on. Now, if you do the widest distance, the unusual distance, this big distance here between these two farther away surfaces, and you do that, you'll find that that makes these little nodes, because it's a further distance, which means there's more triangles you'll make where the hypotenuse is a longer line. Okay, so the line having to go across. So obviously, this drawing, this is 1 millimeter across, this is a foot across. So these two lines don't look like they're going the same way, but they would be going the same way. All right. They both be going that way. All right. So even though this line looks like it's going towards a vertex, if you actually could draw it real proportions, the two lines would both be going in the same direction. And the idea is, you'll see that more clearly when I do this one, let's say. All right. And so all of the little dots are where there's a wavelength of difference from these two sources. So you can sort of appreciate, okay, that you have 4 sources, and when they're both in phase, that is, the small distance is creating an on, and the big distance is creating an on, you get a double. All 4 sources are in phase in this location. All 4 sources are in phase here. All 4 sources are in phase here. And this break in between means, only one of the sources, that is the small distance, is an on. So it's only 2 sources are putting photons there. And technically in this location, it's only the one source. So this one is where the missing the missing dots here is because the wide distance is providing photons, but the short distance isn't. And the distinction is, in a way, between the difference between how dark this dark is and this dark is the fact that there's only one of these wide distances where there's a few short distance sources, in a sense. It's only 4 sources, so you can't make it any more than 4 sources. But the point is that you really do have contributions from this location and this location and this location and this location. So you have those odd ones, and they're the reason why this looks darker than the space here. But it's it's not that much different. Okay. But anyway, so it just points out their own math makes it clear that the experiment is entirely being controlled by surfaces, and that it's not about some wave, okay, going through the opening, okay, and then interfering. There's not 2 waves. 2 waves can't create this complex pattern. You can't get this double pattern, the envelope pattern and the little dots, with just 2 waves. 2 waves, 2 vectors won't produce that pattern. They'll only produce the single slit pattern, some version of this. That's all you'll get. All right, now the other thing that's kind of silly they say is that the single slit experiment is a diffraction pattern and the double slit is an interference pattern. And clearly Professor Lewin argued against that theory. And I would argue against it because obviously it's exactly the same pattern, and all you're saying is you're making the nodes smaller with a wide distance, and you're making the nodes bigger with a small distance. So the smaller the distance, the bigger the bars, the on-off pattern. The smaller the pattern, the wider the distance between the two sources. So this, without saying anything else, you basically have a proof that this isn't about waves going through the openings. It's about surfaces. Now, I could also just point out that, it's just another known fact that you can do the experiment with just a single impediment. So you can shine your light, on a single impediment and actually produce a double slit pattern. A single slit pattern, sorry. So, what's the theory? What's the wave theory? There's really not a wave theory, because again, you'd have to argue that somehow there's a surface out here that's making a wave or something, and there isn't. There's no surface bulging the light or creating a wave coming out this way. And clearly all it is scatter, in my opinion. That's what the obvious conclusion is. So and again, the single slit also proves the point in the sense that if you concede that the pattern is, whatever the pattern is being made by, that it is the same mechanism that creates this envelope pattern and that creates the little nodes. It's exactly the same phenomenon. It's not some different phenomenon. Then you'd have to concede that the single slit is not about two waves popping out of the single opening. It's about the fact that the 2 point sources, and that's all there are. There's 2 point sources, and the point sources are the surface. And a simple argument is you're just scattering broken photons, and you have a 50-50 chance of putting the broken photons back in phase. You're just changing the phase. You're saying, I'm going to make a pattern, and a piece will come from this surface, and a piece of the pattern will come from this surface, and it will duplicate, what the surface is disrupted. It'll put it back together. So there's no reason for any notion of entanglement or photons interfering with themselves or superpositions or any kind of idea that photons are doing something in this space called interference. Now there's another piece of just obvious evidence that it can't be about interference, and that's the radio or radar experiment that also demonstrates that the theory of interference doesn't make any sense because there's no space where these waves could interfere. There's just no place for that to happen. And what it basically points out is those experiments are basically just a demonstration of signal jamming. And but it's the same pattern. So it's obvious you can create the pattern through different mechanisms, that it's not a cliche interference pattern. It's a pattern you can make without any idea of any kind of notion of interference. So the idea is you have a radio antenna, it sends out a signal, you have another radio antenna, same signal, same frequency at exactly the same phase. So they're both sending out the same signal at the same timing. And all you do is put a receiving antenna between them, and then you just move it through that field, and you'll get an on-off, on-off, on-off pattern. You'll get exactly what you get in the slit experiments, except there won't be any double maxima now, because you don't have two arcs blending over each other, superimposed upon each other, so to speak. So you don't have this weird overlap problem. But you'll get the same on-off, on-off, on-off. So this pattern is not an interference pattern. It's just a pattern. And it's the simplest pattern you can make in the universe. On, off, on, off. You can't make a simpler pattern. So it shouldn't be seen as some kind of, it only can be answered as wave-particle duality and all this nonsense. There's no reason to accept any of that as the truth. But you can clearly see the two waves will not interfere with each other, the two signals. And it's really just about in phase, out of phase. When the two signals are out of phase, a radio receiver can't distinguish between either one. So that sort of gets to the idea of what exactly a photon is. And my argument is that's a photon, essentially. It's bits in space separated by a distance. And that's all it is, a period between events. So it's bullets, and you can have the bullets bang, 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 or you can have the bullets bang, bang, bang. You can change the frequency with which the bullets hit an object, and that's what a photon is. So if this was blue light, then red light would be something like this, with twice the frequency. And the idea is simply that when these two are in phase, the radio signal can be received because they're overlapping. So it's a perfect overlap. The receiver can see the frequency. But if I have them out of phase, then there's a problem, because essentially out of phase looks like this. And so now the radio receiver is saying, this is a completely different frequency. This isn't this frequency. That's the one I'm tuned to. This is a completely different frequency. And that frequency is going to have the wrong polarization, because it's made out of two of these. So that's the trick of this, is that you always have to account for the fact that photons have a polarization, which means when they are flying with a distance between them, they have a frequency, so they have a distance between them. They also have a distance in space going this way, and that distance is proportional to their wavelength. So things like microwaves, the polarization is something like 3 centimeters, and that's the same distance as the distance between the objects themselves. So it's somewhere close to similar. So there's a proportional difference between the spacing this way and the spacing this way. All right, and so the problem with combining two frequencies, if I combine two frequencies that have a very small polarization, a very large polarization, a wide distance between the pieces, and then I combine those, I'll still have, if I send another one out of phase, I still have a very wide polarization. And but I have this now higher frequency. So now the frequency and the polarization don't match. So you're not going to be able to receive this signal, because although it has the right frequency to be received, it doesn't have the right polarization, because you made it out of photons that originally had a different polarization, or a different frequency, and therefore polarization. So it's a very subtle point, but I mean, it's really, all of this stuff is important in explaining why in this radio experiment, why I can't just tune to twice the frequency and find the out of phase signal. I can't find the out of phase signal because it's going to have the wrong polarization. That's a lot. Yeah, so let's see what else we can go through. So the radar experiment is the same as this, basically. And all you're really demonstrating is, like I said, when the signals are in phase, you can receive them on a receiver. When they're out of phase, you've lost that signal. You've lost that frequency, because the two frequencies are overlapping and they're just noise now. So you don't get any signal from either one that you can amplify. So you could call it jamming, but it's really just revealing that that's all that's really happening in the two-slit experiment, is you're breaking photons and you have to remake them. You have to rebuild them, and they have to be built out of the same structure that they originally had when they went into the experiment. Alright, so I'll go into the process that you can understand is just a simple explanation for how this happens. I suppose I should point out some of the obvious little details, so I guess I'll do that, regarding why the distance matters, how see, Professor Lewin and others are famous for saying something like, in the double slit, this is actually in his videos, so I mean, I'm going to be it's going to be very close to exactly what he says. So he says that this is a non-negotiable fact, okay, that the photons from here and from here, okay, have to be an on. So the center maxima they're claiming has to be an on. But what they're not paying attention to is the fact that this is 1 millimeter, it's actually less than 1 millimeter, of distance. And this pattern is 1 foot. Okay, it's gigantic by comparison. So this point where the two intersect is a tiny little place. It's just infinitesimally small in the overall pattern. So it can't say that the whole node is on because it's only one tiny dot on the node. It's not the whole node. So it's irrelevant to talk about the tiny fraction of light that is inside of that 1 millimeter. Yeah, it's just a tiny fraction of the photons. So it's irrelevant. And the real thing, the real test, is the idea of just recognizing that all you're really dealing with here is distance. And so you're saying that you're going to create a pattern that's going to be on this field. It's going to be an arc. So technically it should be viewed on an arced screen of equal distance, because that's in your math too. There's an L variable in the math that basically is the distance, okay, from this to the target, and the distance should always be the same. Frankly, that's the L isn't supposed to be a constant. It's not supposed to be L is short here and then gets very long over here. So technically the pattern should be viewed on a curved screen. Now another experiment they never did, so just pointing it out, they never just put photographic film here, and here. Just put a piece of photographic film on these two sides and see if you collect any pattern. Because technically, if it was waves, it should be making a very strong pattern here. The pattern should actually be the same intensity all the way across. So if it was made of waves, it shouldn't get dimmer and dimmer, okay, as it travels. It should be just as bright here as it is here, and obviously it's not. You can see from the pattern that it gets dimmer and dimmer as it goes further and further out on the path. And that would indicate that there's something else causing this besides a wave mechanic, because, again, waves don't care where they add. They add the same amount. The wave doesn't have a different intensity going this way than it has going that way. It's the same intensity on all portions of the wave front, have the same power, the same height, the same amplitude, however you want to describe it. If I throw a rock into a stream, the wave goes out and it has the same intensity in all directions. All right, well, anyway, and so they never put photographic film here and just see how many, do I collect pattern over here? And I would argue that you probably don't, because the thing that's actually causing the effect has nothing to do with their theory, and it's just improbable that you'll ever have a photon travel through or past the surface and be deflected at 98 degrees or something. Just very highly unlikely. So you'll never get a photon from both sources to hit a location like this. But the point is that if I did understand this as a pattern created by these triangles that I'm going to draw, and where I'm looking for a wavelength of difference, the simple way to understand that is that there's just this distance, right? So I have a distance from this surface to whatever I want to call the 0 point, and there's a distance from this, and these two lines have a difference. And you can understand that if that difference, let's just say it was 14.5, well, then we would know that this has to be an off, because there's not a wavelength of difference at this location. And so you can sort of surmise that, oh, well, if this is an off, then that means the next node and the next node are all at exact geometric positions. So what's going to be here at the center is going to be decided what's here. Okay, so where the nodes are, whether the node is here or whether it's here, or whether it's here, where it is decided by where this off is and how much it's off. If this is 0.7, well, then you know it's a little bit down here. 0.5 would be here. 0.2 would be here. So that distance is changing, and that's what's changing the amount of overlap here at the top. So if it's a 0.2, then there's a little bit of overlap. If it's a 0.7, then there's a little bit more overlap. And so the size of the central maxima will vary depending on whether this is an on or an off, and how on it is or how off it is. But it clearly tells you that, well, all I do is figure out how many of these wavelengths there are in this distance, and that'll tell me exactly how many nodes there are. So if it's 15 wavelengths that fit in that distance, then I know it's 15 nodes. If it's 100, then it's 100 nodes on this side, okay, and there'd be 100 on this side, and so the total number would be 200 for that 180-degree arc. Those are huge facts, okay, totally ignored by conventional physics. They never even talk about it. No mention, no anything. Just see if I have another color that's, that's bright enough. Use that instead of red. It's technically orange. Okay. So that's the key to the experiment, really, is just recognizing it's just about how many wavelengths are between the two surfaces, the sources, and that'll exactly tell you how many triangles you can make going in one direction. That'll be a wavelength of difference. And so you just double the number. You're doing half at the first, the triangle's going in the same direction. Again, they have to be going in the same direction, the lines. And that'll establish, it just gives you all the answers to this phenomenon. And so now all you have to do, you've got it well established that the surfaces are entirely where all the fringe photons are coming from. The fringe photons are not going through the center. They're obviously just the ones on the surface. Now, again, that's a fact that they know, because when they do this experiment, and the more open the slits are, the brighter and brighter in intensity this center gets. I don't know how to draw brightness, but it gets intensely bright, where 97% of all the photons will be right here. And the narrower you make the slits, the less photons can get through without hitting a surface, the less bright that center becomes. And obviously in the case of the single impediment, okay, you're going to be wiping out a lot of the brightest light, and you'll be mostly creating fringe light, so the fringes will be quite distinct and the center maxima won't be too bright, which will be a huge advantage in viewing the pattern in some respects, but they never talk about that. So, a single needle makes the pattern, because there's more than a wavelength of difference between the two surfaces. Obviously the needle is about 50 or 60, who knows how many wavelengths of difference you can make. Might even be more than that. And that's what you're going to get, 50 or 60 nodes from 0 degrees to 90. That's what you would get. Now, you're not going to see all of them. You're just going to see 20% of that number, probably. So that's the other thing to realize, that, well, I'll get into that now, that the cause is really an event here, and there's not the same probability of a photon going here as there is a photon going here. And that's sort of represented by all these photons in the middle, that it's more probable that you're going to get bent a little bit, and it's less probable you're going to get bent a lot. And that's what the pattern demonstrates, because it gets dimmer and dimmer. So it makes it all quite obvious. So we do have a dopey comment. Let's see what it is. How are the two different measurements recorded? What are you talking about? There's not two different measurements. So I don't even know what you're talking about. It makes a photon pattern. It's an on-off pattern. And with two slits, there's little dots of light. But if you look at the pattern of the little dots of light, there's two patterns built into it. There's the little dots, and then there's a break between where there's a clump, a clump, a clump, a clump, you know. So there's not different measurements are observed if when you observe it all, you get a different result. So it's an impossible to understand question. How are the two different measurements recorded or observed if when you observe it at all, you get different result? What are you talking about? Waves and lines? LOL? Are you nuts? What are you talking about? That's not a sentence. It's not a question. It's not an accusation. It's quit drooling in the chat. Okay? It doesn't say drool all you like. And do I have to actually say don't drool in my chat? Shit. God, what are you, 95 and you just, you know, I just can drool. I can't say anything coherent, reasonable, actually related to the points made in the video. Fuck. Jeez. People. I mean, it's just, humans, just so despicable. Alright, where is my alcohol? Hello? I need you. I was just here. I mean, I cleaned this like 10 minutes ago. 5 minutes ago. I cleaned it when I was making the video. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Oh, Jesus. People are just so belligerently stupid. So again, their own math illustrates that it can't possibly be waves. Their own math has no waves in it. It just has vectors in it. Okay, so it's demonstrating the truth to them, and they still don't get it. All right, so the simple argument is, let me let that dry a little, that the pattern is being created by an event that takes place on the surfaces. That's what the math is explicitly screaming at these morons, that it's a surface phenomenon. So now all you need is an explanation for why when a photon goes by a surface, it gets scattered. Its pieces get scattered. The whole photon doesn't get scattered, but the photon is somehow broken, all right, and you need to reconstruct it because it's not going to work as a photon. So if I have a single surface, I can't make a fringe pattern. A single surface is breaking light, but I can't make a fringe pattern because I need a second source. Without a second source of pieces, I won't be able to see anything. And all I get is, you know, a diminishment in the number of visible photons. So a single surface will just break photons and it won't put any of them back together. And that's a problem. Oh, Gilbert is back. Poop. Given the single particles, this isn't, you know, we haven't even talked about electrons and protons yet, but it certainly wouldn't have a goddamn fucking thing to do with protons, you fucking idiot. How can he type all that crap that fast? Seems to produce an interference pattern even when fired one. No, it doesn't. Okay, that's all bullshit. So I'm sorry you fall for that theater, but it's just theater. And will you stick to this fucking experiment I'm talking about, fucker? The light experiment is the one that started all this horse shit. So let's stick with that one, okay? That's the Thomas Young fucking experiment that they say is nail in the coffin evidence. Let's just stick to that. I don't want to get into the details of how electron experiments are done because, frankly, if you fucking morons can't figure out that if I shoot an electron through a slit, It's motherfucking charged. It can't possibly go straight. It's impossible for the photon to travel straight through an opening because it's seeing the charges on the surfaces. You can't figure that out? Photons aren't charged, you motherfucking idiot. God, these people are so stupid. Detectors placed at the slits appear to collapse the pattern. How do? Whatever that even means. Does your model account? It doesn't happen! I don't have to account for it because it's absolute shit. Of course electrons are moved and they don't use a fucking slit. I mean, I've already been over this in videos, Gilbert. But all you're going to do is sit there and type crap from a Wikipedia page that makes a bunch of statements that you morons never even looked into. Go look up the Electron double slit experiment. Guess what? There's no fucking slits, you moron. They're shooting the fucking electrons at a crystal. Do you think a crystal is a fucking slit? So don't be typing a bunch of Wikipedia crap into my fucking goddamn chat, moron. Oh, fuck you. Just fuck you. You type this Wikipedia moron shit into my chat and then you say, oh, take it easy, fucker. Well, fuck you. We're done with you, Gilbert. Goddamn punk. You stupid, ignorant little turd. Go back to school. Actually look something up for a change. Instead of relying on what Wikipedia says, why don't you actually do some fucking research? Well, even if you read the Wikipedia page, you'd figure out that, oh, they're saying when they shoot the electron at a crystal, it's this double slit experiment? Well, how is a crystal a double slit? You can't even do that much? I have to do all of it for you? Stupid shit. Let's see. I've never treated anyone like that for asking. You didn't ask a question. Where's the fucking question? I ask anybody in the audience. Is there a fucking question in this shit? How are the two different measurements? What are the two fucking different measurements? What the fuck are you talking about? Recorded or observed? Well, I don't even know what that means. I mean, you can see the fucking pattern. You don't got to record it. You can just look right at it. It's sitting there on the goddamn screen. When you observe it at all, you get a different result. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, what are you talking about? When you observe it at all, it's right there. It's a pattern right on the fucking goddamn wall. What's the observation issue, retard? Waves and lines, LOL. I'm not supposed to react to this LOL shit from you, you little fucking shithead. Yeah, so fuck you. I'm glad you left on your own. No. Let's see. Asking a question. Let's see. I just started your video. Well, I don't care when you started the fucking video. You don't know what you're fucking talking about. I made explanations about how the math points out its vectors from surfaces. If you want to argue something, then argue how it's not vectors from surfaces, that the math does something else. Because that's exactly what the math is doing. And I said if you just draw it yourself, you'll see, oh, well, that's the idea, though. Surfaces that are the furthest apart obviously are making those little dots, and the surfaces that are close together are obviously making the bigger clumps. That's what you have to argue, fucker. Okay, you have zero engagement. Yes, I do, with morons. You don't know anything about the subject. For fuck's sake, and you're just making these... I'll just make some Wikipedia comments, too. I haven't researched anything. I don't know any fuck shit about any of these subjects, but I'll just talk some crap. Alright. So fuck you. Yeah. Alright. So let's get to the cause. That you didn't let me get to because you had to talk this stupid moron shit. People hate him. But I mean, even the idea that I have to explain to people that how could you possibly shoot an electron through a two-slit experiment and expect it to go straight? I mean, theoretically, you'd have to shoot it exactly right down the middle, because if you're closer to one surface than the other surface, the electron is clearly going to repel from the charge on the surface. Can't help it. There's obviously closer to more electrons. It has to move away. You can't figure that out on your own. But again, the fucking experiment isn't even done with a slit. They did it in an electron microscope, right? So another experiment. They said, yes, we did the double slit and tiny gold, and we made nanometer size slits, and they did it inside of a fucking electron microscope. It wasn't a regular slit experiment. And those are aimed electrons. The whole reason why the electron microscope can work is it's got to get the electrons in a nice package to hit the surface, so it knows exactly how much intensity is hitting the surface, and so it can measure the reflections that fly off. But anyway, it's just ridiculous. I mean, obviously, an electron microscope relies on reflections. It doesn't rely on photons, seeing photons hit an object or electrons hit the target. You don't see the electrons hit the target. You're not looking at the target with sensors and seeing what hits the target. You're looking, out here, and you're saying what's reflecting off the target. You're only looking for reflections. Oh, it's just so stupid. All right. So I'm just saying, they lie so much about what these experiments actually are. They call it, like again, Stern-Gerlach. They're shooting silver atoms, and they're saying, well, we're measuring the spin of an electron. No, you're measuring the polarization of silver atoms, obviously. You're not measuring electron spin. Oh, it's just so bad. All right, so as I have proposed, photons are a rather simple object made of light quanta. So you could just say energy quanta. And it's just little bits flying the speed of light in space. And the fact is, when those little bits are chaotic, blah, 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 we can't see them. Okay? But when they're at a frequency, some kind of consistent distance between each other, we can detect them. But we know that part of that detection does require the fact that we acknowledge there's polarization. So the photon has a length. So it's a dot and a dot and a dot flying through space, separated by a distance this way and separated by distance this way. So this is the way to view it. There's a dot moving the speed of light here, there's a dot moving the speed of light here, and there's a dot moving the speed of light here. So the frequency is here, and the polarization is here. All right, so I already did this, but I'm just making it clear. Let's clean that up. So what you're doing is sending these objects that have a shape, these composite objects. So a photon is not a single particle. It is a composite object made of bits, quanta, of force. All right. And so when you have a surface, the simple argument is if you're a scientist, you should kind of know this, that the surface isn't some straight flat line. The surface is atoms, and the atoms have a distinct character in the sense that the atoms are made of a net positive nucleus and surrounding negative electrons. So the electrons are always on the outside of a surface. So what's on the surface is not protons, it's electrons. All right, and I'm going to make another obvious observation. Because they're pressurized, just like on the Earth, it's pressurized, it's pushing up and down. So its vibrations are going in and out of the surface. So the energy of the electron it's at any one moment, one of these atomic electrons is either going in or it's going out in terms of its jitter, substantially. So there's some other directions, but I'm just saying most of the energy is either going out into the surface, because that's like the wave going up into the atmosphere. Out here is low pressure, in here is high pressure. You could sort of understand it that way, higher pressure. So the electrons are just wobbling in that barrier of equilibrium, where the pressure is equalizing, but it's tugging at everything. So everything's wobbling on that surface. So that's the simple idea, that the electron at any one moment is either going that way or it's going that way. And so as the photon goes into the experiment, right, the one that goes here, nothing happens, goes straight right through. Okay, no issue. The one that goes by the surface, some of these bits end up hitting an electron, and the electron can be going that way. That means the momentum exchange will happen, and you'll have a new vector. And so if it hits two electrons going that way, right, you could understand that the vector gets stronger this way. If it hits three, it's even stronger that way, and vice versa. So it could hit one going this way, and then it could hit one going that way, and it could end up still going straight. But the point is what essentially is going to happen on these surfaces is you're going to have scatter. Okay, the electrons are going to take the impact of the photon. The electron is going to move in that new direction, and when it moves, it's pushing on the force, so it's going to create a new bit of force moving in that new vector. And so basically you're just creating pieces of photon, bits of force, that are scattering off this surface. And now you're just saying, can I put a bit of force from here and a bit of force from here and have them recreate, okay, the photon. So one bit comes from this surface, one bit comes from that surface, and you remake a photon. And that's the simple reason the experiment happens, and it works. It's perfectly logical. Perfectly. Okay. All right, Frankie. I don't know shit. Oh, that's not a counter argument for anything, jackass. It's not even close to a counter argument. It's so far from a counter argument that it's so fucking ridiculously lame that fuck you is the only thing to say. Everything I've said in this video is completely accurate. It's just factual, okay? And you're just denying it because you're a belligerent idiot. And that will be proven. So the future will know Frankie was a jackass. I would like to find your channel. I wish I could do that. Frankie. What happens if I click it? Yeah, it doesn't do anything. Report remove, put in timeout. Yeah. Channel activity. I wonder what that is. Go to channel. There we go. Alright, let's see what Frankie's about. More about this channel. Well, there isn't anything there. So he's been on the tubes for 10 years or so. So, Honey Lane, Kimmy's Nissan. Some kind of, this is like some sort of musical playlist he has. So that's it. Yeah, that's all he got. Yeah, you're really brilliant, fucktard. Fucking idiot. Oh, he's got some sort of mass murderer mask thing video. I guess that's some band he likes. Yeah, the mass murderer group. Alright, so anyway, asshole called Johnny something. So his channel's not even Frankie, it's Johnny something. So he can't even honestly have the same name for his comments as his channel name. So yeah, fuck you, Frank. Ugh, Jesus, people hate the fucking human race. I mean, Jesus. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to be educated. They want to stay edumacated. Yeah, they want to stay retarded and stupid and ignorant and duped. Preposterously duped. They fall for this absolute shit explanations. You know, they accept a bunch of distortions, hyperbole, lies, because all they want is validation of the specialness of their existence, because they're all so special. They're all so interesting and significant. No, they're fucking idiots. Alright, so let me think what else is next. So it's just the kind of, I'm just saying, it's just, you know, the whole thing is dissectable, so I just dissect it all. I just explained to you how there's absolutely no reason to believe photons do any of this interacting with each other or any of that crap. Dunning-Kruger effect, real bad. Oh, he's got a little emoticon. Let's see, your guardian, you know, who needs this? Why don't you take your medication, you know, for your dripping ass. You know, you have this dripping ass condition and a micro penis, so why don't you take your micro penis medication? God, what a useless piece of shit. Wow, what a counter-argument again. Another great counter-argument. You provide all kinds of links proving what I said isn't true. Yeah, no, he didn't. Yeah, let's see the video of that electron experiment with the open slits. God, so the only good news is these people just keep validating my point that humans really can't get it any worse than they deserve. Let's see, when the electrons vibrate, they cause photon vectors to change in the slit. No. How many times do I have to say this to you? When an electron moves, it's moving at a force. The force is coming at it. The force is now going to reflect earlier than it would have, which means a frequency this big is going to be converted into a frequency this big. But the point is, it's obviously pushing, you know, reflecting a force. So it's every time it moves, if it moves this way, you can understand that it's going to push that way. It's going to compress the field in that direction. If it pushes this way, it's going to compress the field in that direction. So the pattern, okay, of field reflection is changed by the electron's motion. So if the electron is moving and I hit it with a photon sideways, then the electron moves in a different direction, and therefore it's going to push a frequency in that direction based on its momentum, its speed. So the point is that the piece of quanta that hits the electron isn't the piece of quanta that gets scattered. The scatter is actually a new piece of quanta being pushed in the new direction. It's not the same piece of a photon, but it's representing the direction and energy and momentum of the bit of quanta. Quanta went in this way with a momentum. It interacted with something with a momentum this way. The net momentum is in a new direction. That's not that complicated. You just have to keep thinking in terms of conservation of momentum. And it makes it so easy to just understand that if I'm going to have an interaction between a quantum of force and an electron, that I'm going to get a byproduct that conserves some portion of the direction and all of the momentum. I mean, it'd be easy for me just to lie to you and say, oh, well, the photon goes by the slit and the little bits of the photon get scattered. But the absolute truth is it's a little more complicated than that. It has to go through the motion of the electron first before you get the scatter. So it's a process that takes place. Okay? It's not just as simple as the photon is bent. The photon can't be bent. There has to be an interaction that causes a new direction. So it's like if two cars hit each other, the combined new vector is a different vector, and the skid marks in the road will be in a different line. And so you just kind of think about it as, oh, I see, yes, I've changed the world. It's not the same world it would have been if the cars hit at some other angle. Because they hit at this angle, I get a certain vector. I mean, I have read the Wikipedia page in videos. I mean, I guess I could do that and just keep pointing out how everything they say is veiled and deceiving and deceptive. You know, detector experiments, all kinds of bullshit they reference that never took place. Again, even when they say they're creating a single photon, let me do that drawing. It's not a single photon. I mean, it's like a beam splitter. Okay, it's a little tiny bit off the subject, but let's do that one. It's just such a clear illustration that they make up this, you know, they have all these experiments, you know, using interferometers, and they tell you, oh, there's no ether, or there's no this or no that, because this experiment is, you know, precise and rational in some respect. And you're like, no, it's completely imprecise and completely irrational. So they're you know, they say, well, okay, you're going to send a beam this way, and you're going to send a beam this way. All right, and the idea is that a beam reflects. Did I draw this right? Seems I drew something wrong here. Oh, no, yeah, you only have one beam. Jeez. All right, so you're hitting the glass. There's a portion of the light that's going to reflect off the glass, and there's a portion that's going to go straight through. Okay, so I didn't draw that very perfectly, but it'll have to do. All right, and and so the argument is, first they'll say, well, it's a half silvered piece of glass. Well, it can't be half silvered, because even if the glass has no silver, it's going to reflect like 30% of the light. Okay, 30% is going to reflect off a plain piece of glass, and only 70% will go through, something like that, at this angle. I think that's the truth. So it can't be half silvered, because then it would be creating way too much reflection. So it has to be less than half silver. So, you know, it's all these little things that are just, but the real point is what you need to understand is, let me just draw the thing, the glass bigger. So let's just say that's a cutout, and you're sending light through this way. Yeah, I should draw it a little better than this, frankly. What's going to happen is there's a bunch of, you know, if it's half silvered, you could understand, well, I should put the silver on the surface. You could understand that what's the silvering doing? You know, when I put a bunch of specks. So the silvering is really just specks. That's all it is. It's specks with a bunch of openings. Now, what does that look like? Oh, it's a bunch of surfaces created and distance. So it's a bunch of double slit experiments, right? So all you're doing is sending the light exactly through surfaces, by surfaces, and you know what surfaces do? They create scatter. Okay, so this light is going to be scattering. It's going to be separating. The distance between the photons is going to be expanding. All right. Now the light reflecting, well, it doesn't go through the slits. It doesn't go by the surface. It reflects off one of the pieces. It's going to reflect off the glass, frankly. But anyway, it comes off, and so it's not scattering. So the photons going through are scattered. The ones that reflect aren't. Gigantic difference right there, right? So you're saying, how can they say it's creating two equal beams when clearly this is not the same as this? Okay, those two objects are not the same object. What these photons are doing as a pattern is different than the photons that went through, because the photons that went through are now scattering. And that goes through the whole experiment, and then you bring this stuff all back again and reverse the experiment. Well, one beam's coming back, getting wider, and one beam's coming back, and it's not going to be getting wider until it goes back through the thing. So it's going to start getting wider as it when they're on the target. So one beam is doing this, the other beam is just starting, okay, to go wider for the short distance to the new target. So one beam's doing this, and one beam's going to be like this. And those are the two beams you're combining. And you can understand how they would have a bit of overlap. All right. And so that's the portion that you're going to create your signal out of. Your this and this, you know, your the pattern of the fringe pattern that you're going to get out of the interferometer. It's made out of where these two contributions are overlapping, and obviously it's a very small percentage of one photon, a large percentage of the other beam. And so you know, but anyway, so beam splitters, they don't even understand how a beam splitter works. I mean, to claim that the two beams that come out are the same is just plain stupid, because one beam is getting wider the whole time. And see, you can understand that if you were measuring distance, right, it would actually work to measure the width, right? With distance, this width would get proportionally larger and larger. So it's very good at measuring distance, because the separation, the scatter, is basically telling you what the distance is. So it's a way of measuring the distance very precisely by measuring how far apart the photons are getting. So in a way, you can understand theoretically that will work as a ruler. And that's the part they're really measuring, is how much of the light spreading. I know it dropped. I can't tell. Can't see down there. I won't worry about it now. As long as it doesn't fall into the computer, I won't worry about it. Alright, so the thing I was going to talk about wasn't the beam splitter, it was something that's related. What was it? Let's see. I was going to talk about, oh, the single photon. Yeah. So that they say, oh, we're doing a single photon experiment. Now, Veritasium did this. Okay, he bought this machine for 10 grand, you know, $7,500, whatever it was. All right, and it's a silly, you know, it's this manufactured to just do the stupid double slit experiment in this fake way. And they sell the device with an actual filter, you know, that actually filters the photons to create the effect, because it can't create it on its own. So it is such a joke. So anyway, so when they do this experiment, what they, you know, you have a light source, let's just say a little candle, and basically you're saying, well, I want to create a circumstance. There's a bunch of photons coming off the candle. How do I just get one photon? And so you could argue, well, I'll just make the light dimmer and dimmer. So I could make the light dimmer and dimmer by making it really far away, but it's really hard to make a room big enough to have it that dark where you can have just one photon coming at you in going into your experiment. And frankly, if they did the experiment that way, it wouldn't work. They won't get any pattern at all, because they don't have two sources. You have to have the two sources, more than one source. Let me just put it that way. One source, one photon, won't do a damn thing. So if they actually did the experiment with distance to diminish the light, it would be a single photon experiment, and it would show absolutely no fringe pattern. But they don't do it. So what they do to cheat is they put darkened glass. Now, darkened glass is exactly the same thing as the putting silver, half silvering a mirror. It's just a piece of glass with a bunch of frickin' impurities in it, okay, that block the light, okay, but they're separated by distance, and so it's a bunch of slit experiments again. So all you're doing is taking these photons, and if I'll just use a squiggly line to represent broken ones. You know, so where they're supposed to have 3 components, they only have 2 components, or 1 component. So a bunch of broken pieces are flying out of the darkened glass. And then they measure and say, okay, well, 1 or 2 photons come out a second that they can pick up. So they're saying, well, those are the only photons that are complete photons, okay? But they're really just photons that are actually made out of the pieces that you're creating in the darkened glass. So you're sending a bunch of broken pieces in and saying, how many photons can I make? But the point is, if I put a double slit here, the broken pieces will now be able to be fixed, okay, by going through the slits, because now they're going to be scattered again, And by be scattering again, they're going to rechange what's hitting what, and now you could actually create the pattern because you're breaking the photons before they even go into the slits. And the whole point of the slits is to break the photons. So you've already guaranteed that you have broken photons, and you're already guaranteeing now that you're going to get a pattern. So, but it's not a single photon experiment because you have a ton of energy coming out of the experiment. It's just in the form of broken photons. So you've just broken the phase and the frequencies of the photons, and the fact is you can reconstruct it. So it isn't any different than the polarizers, where you have two polarizing films in opposite orientation, and you just put a third one at a diagonal in between, and it reconstructs some of your photons because you're just restoring their phase. And it's the same kind of idea here. You're going to restore the photons by rescattering them and having them all on one plane. When you're rescattering them, they're all going to go, because the electrons are going in and out on the surfaces, it's all going to go this way. So you're putting all the photons on one linear line, and you're more likely to be able to reconstruct the photons that way. But it's not a single photon experiment. So they claim it's a single photon experiment, but you can understand a single photon can't get through all of these barriers. It comes out broken. Yeah, that's a good enough explanation. And if they actually did it with a true single photon, that would be like doing the single surface experiment. Right? The single surface experiment won't produce a pattern. And under special circumstances, it actually will, because you could actually have a surface, and you have a photon from the bottom that moves the light up, and one from the top that moves it sideways, and so you can use the single surface, but you'll use a piece from here that goes up, and a piece from here that goes straight, and that'll recreate a photon. So you can get some pattern, but it's extremely weak, and you have to use telescopes and different other lenses to actually see the lines. So it doesn't create a fringe pattern, single surface, an easy to observe one, because you need two sources. You need two sources of scatter, because these pieces that are getting scattered are not whole photons, they're just pieces, and the pieces by themselves can't reconstruct a photon. You need a second source that allows you to put them back in phase. And so it has to be at least two sources. And obviously it can be thousands of sources, but it has to be at least two. And even that's a very good experiment. When I do the thousands of sources, that is and again, they're not, diffraction gradients don't absorb light. They're not blocking light. They're not doing any of that. They're just changing the phase of the light. So they're taking a shortcut in terms of doing the experiment. So the idea is if I have multiple slits, okay, what I'll get is a pattern of the very specific location separated by a very large distance. And what I'll end up doing is actually creating images. So if I use a laser beam, I'll end up with just about perfectly round dots. Because what I'm basically doing now is I'm just recreating the image. And you can see that when you look through a diffraction gradient with 5,000 lines, you'll see an image straight ahead. Then you'll see the color separated image over here, and then you'll see another color separated image over here. So you'll see three of the same image you're looking at forward. You'll see that same image over here, and then you'll see it over here, just like this pattern. You're seeing the whole image, though. You're seeing you can see the whole body of something. It's not just a photon that you're sending, because all of these slits are making a contribution, okay, to create that one spot where all of them are in phase. So they're essentially sending you exactly, okay, what went straight through. And in the case when you're looking through it, obviously you're seeing what is looking straight ahead. The straight ahead light goes in and it's being sent to the three locations. So it's really quite interesting. But you actually get images. So you could send Donald Duck's image in. You get a little Donald Duck and a little Donald Duck and a little Donald Duck. Because every source, and what it's really made out of, why it's this pattern, is because you're basically saying it's like brickwork. You know, these two widest surfaces, okay, they're creating a smaller and smaller dot. So you're basically just building a brick wall in a sense. You know, the first brick is here. The second brick is here on top. And the third brick is here on top, a little bigger. And then the third brick, this brick's even bigger. Okay. And now you're saying, well, let me just keep making nodes like that. And if you keep doing all these nodes, you can draw them, there's a point where, guess what? They'll all pile on top of each other just like that. So if I kept making all those bricks, same size here, same size, little ones, big ones, there's a point where they get all chaotic, and there's a point where they'll do this again, where they'll all be right on top of each other. So it'll be in phase from every single one of these surfaces. They'll all be doing the wavelength of difference thing. And so they'll all stack right on top of each other. So all the photons will end up being here. And it's quite interesting when you draw it out. It's another thing I should have simulated, because you can just see it happening. You see the pattern gets all chaotic, and then it just, boom, goes right back into a perfect upside down pyramid, or if you do it this way, you can do it, draw it either way. And you get back to a perfect order again. And that's all this is. Again, it's mechanical. There isn't any waves in here. These are all vectors, straight line vectors. The mathematics is completely dominated by straight line vectors. So why are people talking about waves? I mean, it's a legitimate question, right? Why are they talking about waves? Let's see, that's much darker. Yeah, we'll use that. Blue is... The blue and the reds have finally died. So we'll use orange and brown. Alright, so I think I did a pretty good job of that. Let me see what think about what I've left out. I mean, all of this now in hindsight looks so obvious. It's just like, oh, how could anybody have missed all this? But I couldn't find it the first year, or the second year, the third year, the fourth year. It took me years, okay, to stumble on the simplicity. Because you just don't bother. You don't bother drawing it. You don't bother doing certain things. And if you don't do that, you don't see it. Like I drew this. You know, that's how I first realized, because I said, okay, well, this like if I took a piece of a photon from here, and I took a piece from here, and that would make a little tiny dot here, a little tiny dot here, and then I said, okay, well, if I draw the tiny dots, and then I'll draw the little bigger dots, and then a little bigger dots, and then a little bigger dots, and when I drew it out, I realized, look, it makes the same pattern again. And I said, oh, that's why it's repeating. It's inevitable that it'll repeat. The pattern will repeat. The pattern will repeat. And that was hugely revealing in terms of understanding that that's what this thousands or 10,000 little lines are actually doing, is they're actually creating 10,000 patterns that are layered on top of each other, and there's a point where all 10,000 are exactly in phase. But I'm just saying, so the simple takeaway, so the gravity video, the simple takeaway is momentum, right? Weight, pressure, heat. The Earth has to be hot, and gravity has to cause it. Some asshole posted a link to some bizarre theory that they had, in the 1800s, that the planets like Jupiter are shrinking because of gravity. So gravity makes them get smaller, and then they get hotter because it's smaller, right? There's the same volume in a smaller size, so obviously it gets hotter. Obviously that's not what I was saying. So, it's not the same theory at all. And physics didn't adopt that theory. So he says that nothing unusual. And obviously a theory that conventional physics doesn't believe isn't a theory I have to account for or pay any attention to. And clearly it's not the same argument. I'm not arguing that Jupiter's getting smaller. I mean, the funny thing is they're saying it is. In a way, they're saying it is, but it's an unmeasurably small distance, so they can't prove it. Just very ironic. So the simple takeaway here is, all you have to do is draw the pattern, and you can see that the surfaces are the point sources. They're the center. So if you're going to claim it's a wave theory, you have to put the waves with their center right on the surfaces. And so would that make any sense, right? I mean, you can't really defend that as a theory, right? Here's the single slit. If you're going to be honest to the theory, you have to put the waves here and the other wave here. Yeah. That's where it has to go. There's no other. You can't put it someplace else. This is the wave center. This is where all the vectors come out. So you have to put the wave there, and then the double slit you have to actually make 4 waves. Okay, that's under 4. Obviously, if I put 2 surfaces too close to each other, the waves look they're right on top of each other. So there's no difference. So you can understand in the case of the infinitesimally small ones, all I'm going to get is two scatter points. Because the 2 surfaces will be so close together, they'll be just running right into each other. But if you're going to be honest to the math, this is where you have to draw your wave. This is where you have to draw your wave. This is where you have to draw your wave. This is where you have to draw your wave. Nothing is going through the opening and coming out a wave. And the math proves it. The math that works uses these distances between the surfaces as the point sources for the vectors. They're clearly point sources for the phenomenon. All of the fringe light will have to come from photons that are in that location. Photons in that location. They have to be right where that surface is. Only those photons can make the fringe pattern. They have to be photons that went right next to the surface. Absolute fact, and it completely debunks wave theory. I mean, completely. It's a decisive argument against the crap interpretations of the experiment they're creating, because none of their arguments about what's actually happening can be true. The wave can't be going through the opening because it's here. Alright, so no new comments. I guess everybody's afraid. Yeah. They were scared. So again, 2 people, you can always email me if you have some kind of evidence. Email address is right there in the description. So if you have some kind of evidence to provide it. I'll do a video and show your argument. I mean, just today, like I said, this guy commented and posted something that he obviously just looked it up. He didn't even read the Wikipedia page. Didn't even pay any attention, because right in the Wikipedia page they say, well, this was replaced by the theory that heat in the earth is created by nuclear fusion. Yeah. So clearly it's exactly my argument. That's what physics has thought for the last 100 years, is that the heat inside the Earth has been created by 4 billion-year-old meteor impacts and nuclear fusion, and there's no evidence, okay, that they have, well, they actually don't think it's fusion, they think it's fission of uranium. But the sun is fusing, and that's why the sun is hot. And it's not the reason. Gravity is the reason. Gravity makes mass hot because it is pushing on it. Yeah. It's momentum, weight, pressure. That's how you make heat. Alright, but I don't want to make that video again. But I mean, people are just so dishonest. I mean, to sit there and say, oh, here's a counter argument. He does no work, and then I have to do the work of looking it up and actually saying, oh, well, the real point is this isn't conventional physics, this theory. This was only something these guys thought, you know, for a few days. Helmholtz was one of them, and it was Kelvin, Lord Kelvin. But anyway, it was their speculation. And again, it's just, on its face, it's just kind of silly. Obviously, gravity's creating pressure, and pressure creates heat. You don't need you don't need to go any further than that. Why would I need to go any further than that? You know pressure creates heat. So why are we pretending that the Earth is hot for some other reason than there's a ton of pressure being created? Why would I need any other reasoning? Why would I need to come up with some other explanation? It's just so obvious that heat creates pressure. I mean, pressure creates heat. So why the hell would I need some other explanation? I mean, I'm just looking, why? And then these assholes, they sit there and explain, point out every little mechanical detail of these experiments, this slit experiment, and how the mechanics is unyielding. I mean, it just demonstrates it can't be some other truth. This math works. Waves going through the center of the slits doesn't work. Water waves don't create the same pattern. They don't create the double maxima. They certainly don't create the two patterns superimposed on each other. So I open two slits in water, all I'm going to get is two sources. I'm not going to get four sources, so I can't make two patterns. I mean, it's so damn obvious. Now let's see if I've left anything out. Okay, so I explained that what a photon was. I could explain how you can understand why a photon is created in this manner, so maybe I'll do that. Go a little bit into the atomic theory. But it's more just about, we know electricity creates photons. Alright, in a simple argument, so we know an antenna, okay, and I put electricity into the antenna. And what do we know about electricity when I put it into the antenna? We know that the electricity is going to go fairly fast. So it's going to travel, the electrical potential will travel up the antenna, and it's going to leak out into the atmosphere is the idea. That's the plus and minus end, so to speak. You're throwing a huge potential voltage in one end, and it's basically going to just fly out of the antenna, but it's going to fly out of the antenna as the electricity moves up the wire and the antenna. And so we know it's going to start with a bit here, let's say when the electricity hits, what it's going to do to the atom is it's going to take an atom that's shaped like that, and it's going to turn it into an atom shaped like this. So basically I'm just going to be pushing electrons, okay, out the sides. So perpendicular to the flow of the electricity, I'm going to be creating an inductive effect. I'm basically going to be pushing electrons, again, just like the slit surfaces, except these are being pushed at a much higher velocity. I'm just going to be pushing electrons. And so you can understand that at the speed of light is the speed that I'm going to be pushing the electrons out of the atoms. And so the size of the atoms are going to matter, because that'll decide how much distance, how many atoms I can affect in a certain amount of distance, right? Tiny little atoms, okay, are going to transfer it differently than big atoms because of the amount of time the electrons are moving versus the amount of time they're pushing on each other with force. So it's only when the electron is actually moving that I'm consuming the speed. And we're basically just talking about electron moves, and the electron over here feels the movement, it moves, and then this electron feels the movement and it moves. So part of the movement is the movement of the electron, and part of the movement is the speed of light communication between the electrons. So we know that the electron is only moving a little distance, and that the force between the electrons is a huge distance. So the force will be going the speed of light for this big distance, and it'll be going less than the speed of light for this little distance. So that's why electricity doesn't go the speed of light. It goes something less, something like 80% in a lot of cases. But anyway, so what's going to happen is so when I push, that the electron pushes, it's going to be pushing on the field, it's going to create a compression. That is, so any photons that are heading in here, any force bits that are heading in here are going to go, let's say they have a distance that far apart, it's going to end up pushing into that field, and that means it's going to compress those electrons. And so they're going to have a pattern now. Okay, so I'm going to create compressions in the field that are basically going to be shaped. Just remember, this one goes first. So when this one is here, this one will be here, this one will be here, this compression will be here, this compression will be here. So I'm creating compressions, that is areas where the electrons are closer together. Okay, I'm creating these distinct places where they're closer together, closer together, closer together, closer together. And in time, this one is way ahead of this one. So I'm basically showing you exactly what I drew before, which is the pattern of a photon with polarization. So the antenna is basically creating this effect, where the stuff leaves perpendicular, and the first one's ahead of the second one, and it's ahead of the third one. So this is the speed of light going through the atoms. The speed of the electricity is going to be the polarization, and the distance between them is going to be dictated by the atoms. That's why you get different colors. Okay, so even though I'm not doing just reflections here because I'm aggressively pushing the electrons, so it's not going to be an issue of changing colors, because I'm creating a whole bunch of photons, okay, that are in this is going to be the frequency, okay, between the clumps of stuff. So it's not quite the same. So I'm sending a whole bunch of this little stuff and a whole bunch here, and just coincidentally one piece going out this way is going to have the same timing as a piece here, it's going to have the same timing as a piece here, and the same distance from each other, and that one will be a photon. All of these other pieces aren't going to be a photon, they're just going to be noise. Okay, but I will be making some percentage of them into viable, detectable photons. And obviously, so I've created a pattern. The pattern's now going to hit the other antenna, and what's it going to do? It's, instead of doing this to atoms, it's going to do exactly the opposite. It's going to take an atom that looks like this, and it's going to squish it this way. Okay, so now I'm going to be doing exactly the opposite. And when I squish it this way, I'm going to be pushing the electrons into each other. I'm just going to remake the electricity that I had here. So it's just reversing the effect. I put electricity into the atoms change their shape, they push the electrons push on the field, they compress the field, they send a pattern to the other antenna receives the pattern and does exactly the opposite thing. Okay, it squishes the atoms in the opposite direction, they perpendicularly expand inside the wire, which makes the wire create electricity. So, perfectly understandable. Now, it's not the same subject, but I'm just saying you can understand why photons have polarization, and you can understand the frequency. And that you're basically just going to hit a surface, and the photon is basically going to hit one bit of quanta will hit an electron. That electron is going to push on all the electrons around it. And then one of those electrons is going to get hit by the second piece of force. And so this one was going, let's say, 30 miles an hour. This one's going to be going 20, but now I'm going to give it 30. So now it's going to be going 50. And when it pushes on an electron, that electron will be going 40, and now I'm going to hit it with 30, and it'll be going 70. And 70 is the speed at which I can kick the electron out of the atom. So you can see that the cascade of force, I'm basically just doing the tipping point thing, and I'm just basically saying the first electron moves, it moves a bunch of other electrons around it. I hit one of those other electrons in the next atom. It's already going 30, and I make it go 50. So I just keep adding momentum as I keep hitting electrons that are being pushed by the other electrons. So you can just sort of understand it almost like the pond ripple, in the sense that the first thing hits, and then there's a bunch of electrons around it that are moving, and I'm going to hit one of those again, and then it's going to go out even further, faster. So this one's going 20, this one's going 30, and the next one's going to be going 50. So I can keep adding speed to an electron by keep strafing the pressure between the electrons. So I'm not hitting the same electron with the photon. I'm using 3 or 4 different electrons to actually create the momentum. A single electron can't make a photon. It takes a group of atoms to make a photon. The polarization of light is huge. So just understand, if it's 500 nanometers, there's 1,000 atoms in 500 nanometers. 1,000. There's 1,000 atoms in the distance that a photon is polarized. Or you can understand it in its frequency. So just understand, there's 1,000 atoms. It's a huge number of space that the energy of the photon is hitting. It's not hitting a single atom. It's not hitting a single electron. It's hitting a gigantic hunk of atomic space. Oh, Frankie made another channel. I just don't know. You know, people are just so desperate. I'm desperate to troll you. I won't make a counter argument. I can't make a counter video. I can't make a counter drawing and explain how you said anything wrong. I can't do any of that. All I can do is type shittyisms on your chat. And that's a legitimate function. It's a very good debating tactic, is to completely ignore the subject and just talk about how the guy's butt smells. Yeah, it's a really great debate tactic. I'm one of the superhumans that do this super thing on the internet. And you're a fucking asshole. Human garbage. Trite, trivial, glib shit. LOL, again with the LOL. I mean, that's so 1930s internet. She's... Oh, God, what a piece of shit. You didn't present any argument, fucktard. You still haven't. You have your opportunity. Do it. Present an argument. Where's your argument, fucktard? I don't see any fucking argument. I don't see anything even close to the subject. So just keep wasting your time making sock accounts so you can type these 7 trite, silly words that don't say anything. Just like you yelled at a 15-year-old boy. Aww. So what's the point? He's 15 and he hasn't figured out. I told him 17 times, right? Everybody in these videos know. He's been chatting for 3 different videos and he's constantly off the subject. I had to say to him at least a dozen times. It's a provable fact. A dozen times I told him, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. And he just kept doing it. And you're saying I'm cheating him somehow? I give him 12 warnings and he pays zero attention. And I cheated him. Fuck you. God. These people are just such garbage. God, I can't imagine who raised these pieces of goddamn shit. But then I don't have to imagine very hard because I see these pieces of fucking walking turd every day, pushing their strollers. And you're just saying, I mean, they can't control their weight. They can't even figure out that maybe when you're 100 pounds overweight, you shouldn't be wearing spandex. Well, of course, somebody raised by one of these pigs isn't going to be much of a human. I mean, people who can't, they can't balance their checkbook and they have babies. It's just amazing nonsense. Just hate this planet. The chatters aren't very useful tonight, I have to concede. Not much going on. But I did my job once again, I would argue. It's pretty concise, went through all the arguments, did a pretty good job of explaining why you don't have to believe their lies and distortions and exaggerations. There was never any detector experiments. There was never any single photon experiment. None of this crap they claim happened. And their own mathematics, again, is completely vector-based. It's all about straight line vectors. And yet they're claiming this is about a fucking wave. Berry Hill. I used to know people named Berry Hill. And, it's one of those real weird stories, actually. He was this... it was a girl with red hair, okay? She was, kind of cute. I used to find her interesting. But never talked to her, really. It's one of those kind of things. Her father, though, was this religious, kooky, right-wing, nutty guy, little guy. And I remember every time there was some kind of school event, like in the 6th grade, we had to do some kind of selling stuff to win prizes or some kind of, you had to sell these little stuffed animals, or maybe we just sell cookies. I don't remember what it was. You sell shit and then you get these little goofy stuffed animals as your prize. Why we bothered, I have no idea. Well, anyway, and then they had a raffle on the, and I remember I bought a raffle ticket, okay, and I'm sitting there with my raffle ticket, and he, we went to the same church, so he thought he could give me life lessons, I guess. So he starts telling me how gambling is evil and stupid and all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, well, this is it for the whole year. I bought a 50-cent raffle ticket, okay? It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. I'm not addicted to gambling, moron. And so anyway, I wasn't that. I mean, I just listened to him and said, yeah, people shouldn't do dumb things, something like that, But anyway, so the weird thing is so he's this, moral, nitpicky, anal guy, and he kills himself. He's got 3 kids, and, hangs himself in the basement. And his, I think his daughter or son. Well, anyway, one of them found him. I mean, it's just, you're just saying, what an asshole. I mean, why would you do that to your friend? Why wouldn't you go out, go do it somewhere? I mean, just don't. I mean, first off, abandoning your family is really, a bullshit move. And so many. Well, anyway, so it's just one of those weird fucking stories where you just, I didn't see that coming, that kind of thing. I met his wife at some meeting about some kind of social activism. I can't remember what it was about exactly. And it was just so weird. Trying to think of what we said in that conversation, but it was just very, it was just such a strange thing to happen. Anyway, love how adults love how they feel to give life advice to children and don't even know how to take care of themselves. Yeah, exactly. Like, this guy's got all these kind of issues, and obviously has enough issues where he can't even talk to people about them. Instead, decides to kill himself. And he's giving life advice. Yeah, no, I don't think so. So anyway, so you're probably not the same Barry Hill, right? Okay. It's like one of those people who tell people to drink water or something. Well, I don't know if it's like that, but yeah, okay. I haven't run across the drink water people, but anyway, who knows? Maybe someday somebody will walk up to me and say, drink water. Thanks for the advice, bro, I guess. I gave you advice? Oh, shit. Maybe he's doing satire there. I don't know what he's doing. Okay. But anyway, commenter says, half the time, even when you're nice enough people, I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. I was just like, what is that? A joke? Or is that satire? Or is that quibble? Or is that bacon? What the hell is that? I don't know what you're talking. What is it? It really shouldn't be that confusing. Really shouldn't. I mean, the errors that people make, okay, I can understand. I'm not a good speller. I can make a mess typing a sentence. But when they do it on purpose, and you're just saying, well, that's what he wanted to say? Shit, I don't get that. Yeah, I knew there was a couple in just in freshman year high school, and the guy knocked up his girlfriend, and she was having the baby, and it was just like, you don't know how badly this is going to end. I mean, first, a high school romance, you're just saying, well, how long would the relationship last at all? What chance do they have to survive even high school, as a couple? And, they're just saying, oh, yeah, that's so great for the kid. It's just going to be a wonderful life. And just, people are just such pieces of garbage. Van Wert Country, Ohio. I don't know. Just have no idea what you're talking about. Ohio is really not an interesting place. I mean, there's all kinds. There's just gross stuff everywhere. So everything is just farms. It's just farm after farm after farm after farm after farm after farm after farm. It really is kind of a funny state. It's like dead flat, and it's just funny because it's not that far away, but it's just so damn different. At least that's my memory. Maybe it was Iowa. I don't remember. I was in every state. It's like my father, we went out west, and he just went out west, going through every state possible. It was just kind of funny. Like I said, we do the bottom half, and then we did the top half on the way back. Dakota was a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. I mean, the summer, it's really not too bad because it's not freezing, and it's so deserty like, and you just don't think of it being a desert up there, but it feels like a desert. It's just not as hot. Come to Indiana. Makes Ohio look like child's play and boredom. Yeah, well, it is true. I mean, there's just so many places. Just say, why do people live here? I mean, what the fuck? Yeah. But there are places, like I said, you go to some of the places are awful paradisey. I mean, where they do that Rose Bowl parade thingy, it really does live up to its reputation. And God, I just can't remember the name of anything. What's the port in California, the big port city? Not San Francisco, the one higher. But it's like the weather is perfect. Every day is perfect. At least it was while we were there. Yeah. Oakland, no, Oakland. Geez, forget about it. No, the place where all the boats go to, they do all their sailboating and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And the military has bases and all that kind of crap. No. Long Beach is way too south. It's not that far from L.A. How is it? Gee, it's funny how I can't remember these things. It's a simple enough name, blah, blah, blah. And San Diego, there you go. You got it. I mean, it really is just like, fuck. Why wouldn't everybody live here? It's beautiful, the air was nice. It's just, yeah, you could live there. And it wasn't too, some places are just ruined by, like San Francisco, it's cold and windy. It's just way too windy. And San Diego is just a little tiny breeze and just perfect. But yeah, I'm probably exaggerating. But it's almost like it has, like, it's like the temperature range is, 78 to 83 or something. It's like this perfect temperature range, and you never go too high, you never go too low. Have you ever been to Hatford City? Well, does it have the biggest ball of yarn, or the largest turnip? We went to every place that was just, and we did it on purpose just because it was funny. It wasn't like we were all that interested, but we'd see the billboards for some kind of dopey tourist trap, and my father would go, "Oh, we got to see that crap," let's see how many sticks are holding it up. So we actually went to see where those balls of string. Right, and the thing is outside. And it's all covered in mold, and it's all sagging. It's like one of those giant pumpkins, that are just so deformed and mutated in its shape. You're just like, oh, that's disgusting. Oh, and so it was just so funny, because it was just such a, it was just such a preposterous pile of crap. Who the fuck would bother with this, right? You're almost saying, I bet you there's like it's hollow on the inside, But yeah, we would do that kind of crap. We always went up to Canada and then Prince Edward Island every year and all that kind of stuff. And we went to the potato museum. So they have a potato museum. And it was actually interesting, because you find out all these potatoes that came from South America and they did this and did that. So it wasn't like it was totally not interesting, but it was just so funny to go to a potato museum. I mean, just the idea of it is just funny. A potato museum. Yeah, some places are not very pretty either. They've got crappy trees. Kansas, was that the one? Kansas. I mean, you know, Texas was kind of nice if it wasn't for all the fucking cows. So you couldn't go anywhere in Texas without smelling cow shit. It was just, you know, and they have those oil pumps everywhere. But I mean, it's just the cow shit. How did people, I don't know how they sleep at night. You know, we were living in a trailer, so it was like, oh, fuck. And it was just, you know, 90 degrees and just, you know, cow shit. Oh, 90-degree cow shit. It's just so bad. Wow, your life is very connected to my stories. Shit, you've been to the places I'm talking about, and then you're like mentioned cows, and you're going to have a bunch of cows next door. That's really funny. Yeah, I loved where I used to live, frankly, but it was getting kind of tainted because the farmer across the street was starting to go back to being a farmer. Like he was just a, you know, he grew Christmas trees, so it was called a tree farm because he got a complete tax write-off, right? So he didn't pay taxes on any of his acreage because they called it a tree farm, and he sold 3 Christmas trees a year. So it was just such a racket. But anyway, he decided to become a farmer again. Their grandson or whatever took over the place, and they started investing in a mini brewery, you know, making beer and doing, you know, a few pigs and all this. Anyway, so it was starting to get scary in the sense that, oh no, this is going to turn into a real farm. So that was bad. And then there was a bunch of foreigners who would come to the park in the town to roam their dogs, and so they'd have 5 Dobermans and just let them run loose. And so it sort of ruined taking a walk in the park because you didn't know if you're going to get mauled by a dog. And then the bears started showing up, you know, and it's like, how far do you want to venture into the woods with a bunch of bears out there? So it was sort of ruining my fun, you know, especially just, you know, jogging with bears. You know, that's probably not a good idea. But anyway, yeah, this just sucks how everything changes and gets broken and ruined. But I do miss my old life. Yeah, lament. I miss being 40 years old, you know. Yeah, it's just like, oh, I would take 40. Yeah, I'd like to have 20 again, but yeah, I would take 40. I'd take 45. Anything but 65. Yeah, well, people suck. They're just, you know, it's like the guy who bought our property and condoed it, you know. It's like he just didn't care that the people living there all had a life. I mean, I lived there for 40 years. I had a life. And they just don't give a shit. I mean, you know, just about making their little fucking grafty profit. You know, turning a place that has $1,000 rent into a place that has $3,200 rent, you know. And the only good news is they didn't cut down nearly enough trees, so the whole place is going to get leveled the next time they have a superstorm. Yeah. But I can't imagine people paying $3,200 for a tiny little cottage. I mean, that's more than the average mortgage, $3,200 a month. Why the fuck would somebody pay that as rent? And it doesn't include utilities. You know, it's just crazy. I mean, I can't imagine the assholes that must have moved in. I'm just like, who the fuck spends that kind of money on rent? I mean, if you have that much, if you have enough money to pay that rent, you have enough money to put a down payment and buy a place. I remember talking to his grandma, who lived next to me. We were good friends. Moved in the late 90s, and then a year later, he's buying a dairy farm right next to our properties. Yeah. Yeah, people suck. Someone had to break it. I wonder what that means. Rent here, yes. Well, prices are gone so crazy. I mean, this shitty neighborhood I'm living in, and they're selling houses for $500,000. And you're like, this is nuts. You know, it's just crazy pricing. Yeah, well, that's really cheap. Yeah, $500 a month. Damn. Yeah, I saw a house advertised in Alabama, and it was a goddamn palace. You know, it had 2 spiral staircases, you know, balcony, just, you know, giant pillars in the front, you know, like 50-foot tall giant pillars, beautiful yard, and it was like 125,000 or some kind of number. I was like, I could do that. you know, selling this place, blah blah blah. We could move. And it's like, you know, and I was really, but I said Alabama. Damn. Oh no, I can't go back down to the. I love the South for the weather, but the people in the South are just so fucking stupid. Rural countryside, former asylum converted into an apartment complex. It's really a cool place. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like living too close to people, so I don't think I could ever do the condo thing or the duplex thing or the. I mean, it's just so unreliable. You don't know what you're going to get as a neighbor. I mean, I've had a friend who had that kind of problem. He got a great job in New York, but he ended up living in a place where the people were making him insane, you know, the neighbors, and they ended up getting to a war, and so he would play his drums louder and louder, and they would do their thing, and it was like they were really going to come to a knife fight. It was just, but, you know, it went on for months and months. All right, well, this is way off the subject, so it's just, you know, violating my own rather rigid rules that these videos really should try to stay focused on the prize, the physics agenda, and all of this little human interaction stuff is all fine, but yeah, it's not what I need to do. But it is frustrating that you just can't get any civil, rational conversation out of people. I mean, not to concede that what I spent, whatever it was, an hour and a half diagramming works. It does explain. It's a viable alternative to the conventional notions of reality. Remember, they won't even concede that. Well, I think it has some sort of whatever hashtaggy crap that covers that. But whatever. I don't think it matters to Google. I mean, the algorithm is just such a pile of crap. The recommended videos, it's all this, you know, you just get videos recommended by the same 5 people, you know, that's it. And they're all people I hate. Alright, let's see. Any last something I can do here? You've said this multiple times. What have I said? But it's truly amazing. It's like Scientology. What's like Scientology? Physics? Yeah. I don't, you know, look, Scientology is screwed up, you know, the whole cultiness of it and the bullshit. But there's nothing, I mean, it's like you have to take everything and say, okay, part of it is absolute nonsense, but part of it is, I think, a valuable self-actualization kind of theology, in the sense that they're arguing that basically, you know, self-confidence is really important, you know, and you know, you do have to point yourself at something to be something. You can't just accidentally have a life. You have to do some of this shit on purpose. And so that part of it is, in my opinion, probably useful. But yeah, if all of it is getting a bunch of stupid people to sign up to do work for low wages, well, fuck that. But the whole instrument is just so weirdly financed. The whole thing is so strange. I mean, it's all legacy foundation money in a sense. So they own a bunch of property, as I understand it, and so, you know, they can just keep making money on the increased value of their property and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I don't even know why people would actually fall for the whole volcano theory or any notion that it's some sort of magical technology that makes their brain work better, when no, it's just a little bit of psychology. But I'm definitely not of the opinion that this is something society needs to worry about. I mean, Scientology is a lot, it's better than Christianity, you know. But I don't get your point. Yes. Okay, so you're talking about physics is like. So yeah, I don't know if I see that connection. It's like Christianity as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they have a silly theory backed up with no good evidence, and they just keep selling it with confidence like they have the truth. So what's the difference between a Catholic and a physicist? You know, in my opinion, there's not much difference, because both of them haven't dropped 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet. They haven't done anything to shore up their theory. Show me the man who grows a new arm, okay? I'll believe in God when you show me that guy. It's a miracle. Well, it can only be a miracle under certain circumstances. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. The miracles have rules. You can't grow a new organ, and you can't, you know, but yes, I can cure your fake and fictitious cancer. So you are a god. I don't even know what that would mean, but you create universes. You know, you design evolution as a great plan. Let's kill all the babies. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's kill them all. Well, almost all of them. Very brutally and very quickly. And then we'll let some of them hang around for a while and and get old and disabled and die. And it'll be really fun. So you've done that? I'm thinking of taking physics as my major, should I? Well, I find it insanely fascinating. But if you're going to take it as, well, I want to get good grades in mathematics, well, you know, physics in college isn't going to be about concepts. It's just going to be about formulas. So, you know, like I said, they haven't dropped 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet. They haven't pushed things into a scale with a velocity, a momentum, with the scale pointed this way instead of this way, right? They haven't been able to do this simple experiment. Push something into the scale and see how much it weighs. And see what velocity it's going when it weighs its gravitational weight. So its gravitational weight's there. See how fast it has to go to weigh its gravitational weight. They haven't even done that experiment. So yeah, if you really love physics, well, yeah, you probably shouldn't bother. Frankly, you can watch all of the lectures online now, so who cares? You can pick 4 different instructors. You can, you know, basically do the physics. But what you really have to go through is the experiments. You have to, because it's all hype and propaganda, as this video points out. They say they do an experiment. It really isn't what they claim it to be. We shot electrons through a double slit. Well, no, you didn't. It's a fucking crystal. It's a big hunk of crystal. And you bounce the electrons off the crystal. What the fuck are you talking about? That's not a double slit, you moron. But labs, though. Well, I'm just saying, the labs are also in the lectures. You can find labs. You can. I don't see anything missing. I mean, it would be great if Albert Einstein had made a whole bunch of video recordings. But besides the fact that you don't have Albert Einstein teaching, there's really so much out there. Like I said, I've watched hundreds of lectures. It's probably getting close to 1,000 different lectures. And, there's value in all of them. But there's a huge amount of wasted time and nonsense in most of them. See, if they're not going to give you the context of anything, there's just no point. Again, the Young experiment was not novel. This double slit experiment. Newton had done this experiment, and he had done this experiment. So he had done the 2 versions of the 2 surface experiment. All right. And so fringes were well known. He did it with lenses. He put a lens on a table and he made fringes with the lens. So, I mean, he knew about fringes. He just didn't know what caused them. So it wasn't some novel thing that Young discovered. So everything is just propagandized. I'm just saying, it's just, they claim something was proven by something, and it's just not. It's just so weird. I wish they had like a college equivalency exam. So I wish you could just go out and learn the subject and then just take the examinations to get your degree. It's like they do with high school. So instead of having to bother, just give me the damn test. And if I pass the test, I get to wear the little badge. So that's it. Because I don't see any point in going to a lecture that's just performance art. You could watch Professor Lewin live, or you could watch him on videotape. Well, the great thing about the videotape is you can pause, you can rerun it. You can say, I didn't quite get what you were saying there, so I'll go back 4 minutes and re-listen. It's so much more powerful. Why the fuck would you bother being there? How would being there help any? Because if you're there, right, you're going to be looking at the chicks and doing, you're going to be distracted. So being there isn't going to help you any. just about knowing how to do something. It really, how you acquire the capacity to be competent. And it really shouldn't require you to go to gym class. I mean, that's the other part that was just when I was going to go to college. And then, I got an anxiety disorder, blah, blah, blah. I just couldn't get there. So I was already accepted at LSU, was going to go to LSU, blah, 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 blah. And so they had already sent me a schedule and all this kind of stuff. And it was like, I have to go to gym? I was like, well, I'm paying you? And you're going to force me to waste my time in a gym class? I was like really pissed off that this was actually something they still do, is treat you like a kid. I'm not a fucking kid. I'm spending my own fucking goddamn money to go to fucking goddamn college. And, I had to work really hard to make that money. And I'm not going to pay you to take a gym class. I mean, I was just, oh, look at that Adam Lanza name. God, what assholes. Who the fuck, what kind of asshole would keep Adam Lanza's name alive? Why would you do that? Or, would you do this all day long? You just keep bringing up assassins and killers? That makes sense to you? Make them live forever? Just so ridiculous. I mean, I'm about the most anti-nihilist person on this planet. I mean, I'm always talking about objective value, how it's obvious that the welfare of feeling things is incredibly important. It's a precious commodity. And these people think I'm somehow associated with a guy who goes into a school and shoots kids. What the fuck? It's just so idiotic. I must start work as mechanic. Yeah, I did do that for a while myself. And, that's, I was supposed to be, see, I'd always tinkered. So I had some, I could do tune-ups, and so I ended up just doing oil changes all day. And, and once in a while I'd get something good to work on. But, yeah, they just kept giving me the shit jobs because I was the lowest qualified mechanic. And, it just didn't seem, like there was enough upward potential for advancement. So I got out of that racket. Why would you be associated with Adam Lanza? That's weird. Well, because I have another channel that does philosophy, and the philosophy is kind of life negative. And Adam Lanza, for a while, was lingering in different social elements that are sort of related. So it was sort of an anti-procreation thing, so he was barely tangentially related, but he didn't share any of my values, and actually called me an idiot and too moral and all kinds of things like that. So I never knew him, but he was, like I said, he was peripherally connected to people that shared this kind of negative view of existence. And so that's it. It's the guilt by peripheral association. I mean, your association doesn't even have to be 7 levels of, you know what I mean? You really don't have to be very connected. So it's almost like somebody saying all vegetarians are like Adolf Hitler because Hitler was a vegetarian, right? Hitler loved dogs. Oh, therefore anyone who loves dogs is a fucking Hitler. I mean, it's almost that bad. So it's just that people who can't make an argument, they have to just do this somehow taint, and say you're part of something where you weren't part of it. Yeah. And these are the same people who will defend people who are obviously supporters of evil causes. I mean, they go up to the guy in the white, Klan suit and hug him, and then they pretend, well, he wasn't a Klan member. It's just, it's just hilarious. Like, it's almost just as bad as, like, say if you live next door to Adam Lanza and you helped him fix his bicycle or something, that you contributed to the murder of children. It's always just so, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that's how bad it's getting. I mean, you almost can't say anything negative about anything without them saying, you caused the problem. Yeah. You made sunspots. No, I didn't. Yeah, it's just the truth that I think on some message board somewhere, Adam Lanza used my screen name and made a comment. So I'm just saying, so obviously I'm connected in this peripheral way that he referenced my videos as if he had watched some of them. But we fundamentally disagreed, so that's the irony of it. It's like some atheist being mentioned by a Christian, and then they say the atheist is associated with the Christian beliefs. And it's like, how could you be that fucking stupid? Of course, yes, we were, I mean, I can't say we were enemies in any way, but we had nothing in common in terms of our philosophical perspectives. And yet, because he mentioned my name, I'm somehow guilty of something. And he mentioned my name in disagreement. I mean, that's the irony of the whole thing. I'm just saying the world has gotten so dishonest. I mean, all the fake news, all the bullshit. It's just, it's so depressing because there really just isn't, free speech has really been ruined, because if you do the calculation, there's no point in saying anything about anything because somebody is somehow going to make you have to pay for it. And that's just disgusting. I mean, this idea of thought crimes. Fuck. It's like there's actually people kind of defending the notion that if somebody has the wrong sexual orientation and they fantasize about sex with a kid, that somehow they're guilty of a crime. They never will touch a kid. They're never going to harm a kid. They're never going to do anything. They're just going to have thoughts in their head. And we should go out and kill them or something. That's a crime in itself. A fantasy is a crime. I mean, that's when the world's really gotten too nutty. I mean, looking at pictures is you're evil. It's just too silly. And especially, it's so unempathetic in a way, just because we know, I mean, if you're a normal person, you've got to know that there's points where you've been irrational, that you've overreacted, that you don't have complete control of all of your emotions, and then just understanding the whole sexual orientation thing and deviance. And you've got to be able to say, geez, yes, the fact that I came out with relatively normal sexual orientation, just lucky. Like I didn't do it. And so you're just like saying, how can I not be empathetic with people that have, some sort of bloodlust, or, they like seeing brains explode or some sort of, kind of horrible thing. And you're saying, okay, I can understand that, but don't act on it, right? So it's like you could like shooting things or shooting animals. And then you could realize, Well, it's not nice to do, so I'm not going to bother doing it. So I'll just shoot targets that look like animals or some kind of crap like that. You find some way to supplement your desire. You don't go to Africa and shoot the poor things. I mean, I'm just saying, I can understand people having perverse or even horrible thought patterns. Acting on them is the only crime, though. Having them isn't a crime. There's a case of this where media organizations will report on one subject and uses the Reddit post as an example. Yeah, no, I'm just saying there's people responding to accusations made by people who have no information. They're just making up stories, and then somebody else is reacting to these fake stories and saying, oh, yeah, I'm totally opposed to that. But they never even, they have no idea what the guy actually said or the context in which it was said. So again, all of this, there's just so much bullshit going on. And the AI thing means they can make it look like me and have me saying things I never said. And, there's so much, really, just so much malicious territory here. And they really got to have some kind of law against this slander shit. And the laws are getting weaker, not stronger. They need to get stronger laws against lying, not weaker ones. Lying is bad. I mean, these people who lie about, oh yeah, a bunch of Trumpers assaulted me, and all, these are really, this is evil. When you're making up fake crimes, that is evil. Some woman says she was raped when she wasn't. That's a fucking crime. She belongs in prison. You don't fuck with somebody's life with lies. But, like I said, I can complain all I want, and me complaining about it ain't gonna fix anything, and people just seem totally bent on voting in assholes, so there doesn't look like any cure on the horizon. I mean, it seems like both parties are just seeing how fascist can we be. Can we be more fascist than the other political assholes? I mean, the liberals have just turned into fascists, guardians of their propaganda, and they're just as bad as they're just liars, frankly. I know this is completely unrelated to the subject. We're already out of that territory already, but how do you feel about men's rights advocacy? Not talking about goofy stuff like MGTOW or Mansophia. I don't even know what all that crap is. I mean, men who are resentful because they can't compete for women. Okay, well, that's just tough shit, right? There's nothing you can say about that. I mean, what, you're going to force women to love you? So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, some of us are, born defective. Now, in some sense, I had everything, but I couldn't do anything with it because my brain was uncooperative. So, we all have our disabilities and liabilities. And winning is often losing, right? So you can also argue that, you're almost lucky if women aren't attracted to you because you won't be making as many mistakes and get caught in all kinds of traps and have your life absolutely ruined. So, but it's all whining, I guess, is what I would argue. I mean, we already know life isn't fair, and there's a lot of tough luck in existence, and that's the whole reason why I have a dark philosophy. It's because, yeah, you can't play this game rationally. You're just stuck in a terrible predicament, and you certainly can't force people to be your slave. They can't be slaves to what you want them to be. You can't own women, so that's just ridiculous. So, bitch all you want, but I don't understand what you're bitching about. It doesn't make any sense to say I'm ugly, but I shouldn't be. Well, yeah, I agree, you shouldn't be, but you are, so tough luck. I don't know what they're arguing about, And then they say, well, to fight the problem, I'll make myself even uglier. So I'll grow a hideous beard and look as dirty and as disgusting as possible, and that'll make me really hot. Yeah, I don't know. Is that what you're thinking? It ain't going to work. If that's your strategy, it ain't going to work. But I don't even know that love affair. Look, I don't understand people at all in this love affair with some naturalism or some other kind of shit. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, frankly, relationships are insanely complicated and messy, so I don't, I never imagined getting married, frankly. It wasn't something I thought about as a kid. Oh, yeah, I'm going to stand at the altar and get married. No, I was like, why the fuck would I do that? And it's not because I wanted to have trivial relationships. It was just like, why would I do this? This is like a Christian thing or something, or some other kind of bizarre ceremony. I don't need to do any of that shit. I don't want a woman to stay with me forever if she has lost interest in me. Right? I mean, you could argue that, let's say somebody was my mate, and then I got obsessed with this physics shit. And, I was devoting my life to that, and I wasn't paying much attention to her and all this other. I could see somebody saying, hey, fuck you, I'm getting out of here. Why shouldn't they have the right to say, fuck you, I'm getting out of here? I don't, you ain't doing it for me no more. These are just practical facts of life. So I never thought of, oh yeah, I'll make a woman a slave. I'll own her. That's too silly. I mean, I never fought for a woman's attention in my life because I knew that, well, the only thing that matters, she's going to have to like me as me. I can't pretend to be somebody else. I don't want to keep dressing up, and I don't want to keep pretending to be somebody I'm not. So if she can't deal with who I am, then, yeah, just move on, because I don't want to be somebody else. And that was an ideal. I mean, I really wanted somebody that could love me. And, well, that didn't happen. So tough luck. But that's all it is. It's just, it's the way it is. You either meet somebody who you can have a life project together, somebody has the same interests, and, you're afraid of the same thing, and you hate the same thing, and all that kind of crap. But that's really hard to find, I think. Good luck. I understand wanting it, but, I mean, the odds are like you becoming a professional basketball player or something, It's literally the number of relationships that are that is a tiny percentage of the relationships on Earth. There aren't too many Madame Curie and Dr. Curie. And, partly that relationship even was a little bit weird just because, it was kind of a professional relationship. And yes, they had kids and all that crap, but, I don't even know how she did all that shit. She wins 2 Nobel Prizes, in different fields. Has 3 kids, and does all of this, discovers radium, all this other crap while she's doing that. And survives being exposed to insane dosage of radiation. Kind of amazing. And then when she's dying, during the war, she was trying to get the government to finance her ambulances, that would go out in the field and x-ray bones so they could, make the injuries less severe. And, she just never stopped, incredible story. But they lie about everything, right? Because I saw the movie was just sort of a pile of shit. Really didn't have any truth value in it. Um, because her whole family was really smart. And, they did take care of each other. Whatever. Is there some reason why I shouldn't block you? Crazy Trini, whatever that even means. Had no idea that you were doing physics, Gary, but to me it seems as dumb as Effelism. Well, guess what? I don't care what you think. Yeah, why should I care? Why should I have any interest whatsoever? Why should a single one of my neurons be at all curious why you type something so inanely meaningless? Yeah, there's no reason. I don't like you. Wow, yeah, boy, you sure defeated my argument there. I mean, the ugly part of, obviously I'd argue I am a feminist, and in the sense I had 3 sisters. I know that women are abused often by men, and lies, and all kinds of terrible things happen to women, because of men being too stupid and too horny. But anyway, but yeah, it's hard being a man too. But anyway, so I always had some empathy for the woman's position because I had sisters, so it made it really easy to be empathetic. But I just don't have any, my sisters weren't playing with dolls. They weren't wasting time putting on makeup. They weren't, I just hate that people are still training their daughters to be objects of attraction and not much else. I mean, there really aren't. I mean, all these women go to college and they never have a career in the thing they actually went to college for. I mean, it's just such a waste. And so that part pisses me off. And the women that do succeed are just a little bit too male in the negative sense. It's like they think being a free, liberated woman is being Homer Simpson, the female version of, and that's not what you're trying to be. You're not trying to be the lowest common denominator male. You're trying to be the exceptional male. And so there's way too much of that kind of crap going on too. So it's really, well, whatever. I don't know. As time has passed, okay, I'm just finding myself quite distant from any notions of interacting with women in any other respect than as just people, and they have their beliefs and their thoughts, and I just can't be bothered playing any more games with anything. But that's just because there's no future in anything, right? You don't know if you're going to be alive a year from now. So how the fuck can you invest in anything? And I was always kind of comfortable with that. I mean, it's not like it was a terrible tragedy. Like I said, I mean, I spent a lot of years being awful lonely and sad, and yet I'm almost mocking myself for being upset about it, because what was wrong with the life I had? It wasn't that bad, so I shouldn't have made it artificially empty, because I had just as, all I had was just a stupid notion that I'm missing something. I didn't have the reality of actually missing anything, because in a sense, I had every freedom I really needed. And frankly, most of my life, I mean, I knew how to, how to entertain your own sexual needs. So it's almost like, well, yeah. What do I? The woman's almost superfluous. You know, I really don't. You know, I mean, I really don't need her. You know, it's just it was just an idea that it's somehow the right way to do it, and it's like, it's really not true. I mean, it was just an ego thing. You know, it's just like, I guess part of it is there's something inside of you that just, you know, like a little tiny bit of instinct that says you're in a competition and you're alpha and you've got to win this, you know, trophy and some kind of bullshit like that. And that must have been motivating me. Because, yeah, frankly, when you look at the whole thing and the big picture, it's like, well, what role does she play exactly? Because even when you're, you know, making love, you're often just fucking. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, it's almost like, yeah, okay. So I sort of made the argument that I would probably be perfectly okay with the idea of fucking a robot or whatever. I mean, I don't, you know, just simplifies everything. I don't know what that sounds like wooey crap. Prosperity comes if we look for it. I don't know what that means. Water goes where I will it, not where we want it. Oh, you're getting a little weird, buddy. A lot of weird. Anyway, sex is a waste of time. Well, I don't know. It just depends on what you mean by sex. So I'm sort of arguing it's a waste of time to worry about doing it with somebody. Yeah, but it's never a waste of time, you know. It's a very fine pleasure. Very relaxing. Takes the edge off. It is funny how it just stick with you, though. Like, you know, I have all these little images from when I was 11 or 12 years old, 13, you know, all those years, and just certain views of girls in the classroom. You know, and like that image always pops into my head. You know, the little sunlight's coming through the window. You know, hitting her hair just right. She's wearing a nice sweater. You know, it's just so funny how you just never. You never lose any of that. All of these moments. You know, as much as I'm against mink coats, uh, you know, it's like doing that airplane thing. I mean, everybody should, at one time or another, you know, screw a woman on a mink coat. You know, it's pretty good. Pretty good fun. Well, yes, of course, smoking feels good when you're addicted to the substance, you know, so, you know, obviously my brain is, it takes the noise away. Without nicotine, it gets cluttered and noisy. And I have a little bit of nicotine, all of a sudden, everything's fitting in its right place again. So it's like the puzzle pieces you start seeing the cracks in the puzzle pieces without the nicotine. And then you hit the nicotine and all the cracks go away and you can see the puzzle. Yeah, don't ever get addicted to something. It's just a mistake you don't want to do. Hey, it's me, Gilbert, whatever. I'm sorry for being weird back there. I was just asking a question to spike engagement. Joe, that's even a bad thing to do, artificial nonsense, but there's no spiking engagement by putting a whole diatribe of absolute bullshit that I have to spend 15 or 20 minutes explaining why every one of those sentences is incorrect. You don't understand how that would be irritating from my perspective? I wasn't really doing the let's debunk their absolute nonsense. I was just pointing out how I can draw it and explain how their nonsense is obviously nonsense. But whatever, it's fine. I'm just, it's just saying, I gave you plenty of warning, and you just kept pushing. I mean, it's like this, every one of you people is weird. I mean, this Barry Hill guy is kind of weird. He's saying he's God. He can change the flow of rivers or some kind of shit. He can make himself prosperous or something. I don't know. It's all very weird. Add a hashtag physics question. That's not a question, but whatever. There's hashtags built into the videos already. And one of them might already be physics, okay? Because it doesn't put it in the title doesn't mean it's not there. But I don't want to argue with you. It's in the defaults for the video. The category science and technology or something. It's all that's been done. I mean, if I looked it up, there's probably 20 words that I have hashtagged. So, but whatever. Okay, fine. I should do something. I don't play YouTube, okay? If YouTube's going to have a bunch of weird-ass, silly policies, I'm not that interested in validating their weird-ass, silly policies. Well, I don't mean to, even if I don't know how. I don't know what that even means, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It's, the hope for a coherent is just not in the card, so I have to accept a bit of this incoherency. So whatever, I will accept it. And complain a little bit about it. It'd be nice if it was a physics conversation. But that's just not possible, apparently. Alright. Anyway, it's probably getting late. I probably should just get the hell out of here. So, blah, 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 blah. And such. Yeah. So, this will be another... There will never be any coherent response to what I did in the first 40 minutes of this video, because all of those valid arguments can't be refuted by any physicist. Alright, your channel has definitely been very spiritual. That's not a good word for me, buddy. But anyway, I would have appreciated being able to watch my videos as a kid. I would have liked that somebody made content that was anti-establishment and just pointed out that there's, a simpler way to view reality than all of this bullshit that people have made, all these facades, all this fakeness. And it's all over our lives. I mean, just the pretense of this. We have to wear clothes, and we have to do, we have to do all of this marching in these little narrow lines, between these little narrow lines, and none of the lines make any sense. They don't have anything to do with anything real, and they're just such a lie to our bug reality. It's just a way of hiding that what we really are is just stupid little bugs. We have this giant brain, and we're using it to walk narrow little silly arbitrarily drawn lines. And it's just like, well, what's the point of having a brain if that's all you're going to do with it? Is just go wherever they lead you. Just be a sheeple. And go where the dog, tells you to. Or the pig. All right, anyway. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, the whole health thing is weird. Stress will kill you or stress will make you stronger. It's just so hard to say. My comment wasn't meant to be serious. Okay. Well, then always try to make your comments serious, and I would be much happier then. Because I don't like unserious comments. I don't like satire or innuendo or indirectness. I like directness. Honesty. Yeah, I like honesty. Yeah. Can somebody be honest? Alright, my comment wasn't meant to be serious, but your content is definitely the best on YouTube. Well, that's nice to say, but you're not much of a judge, but it's okay. The 15-year-old kid says I'm the best on the internet. Yay! You can't really wear that as a badge. But anyway, well, let's not even go into usernames. What is it? He's got fart in there. Fetish. Fart fetish. Okay. I have a fart fetish. Interesting. I never farted, which was really interesting as a kid. I mean, 4 times a year or something. So it was kind of strange, now they're getting old, and I'm actually becoming an old fart. And it's just kind of a bizarre experience because, and the good news is, though, it's all just air, there's no stinky fart problem. But it's just funny, how, I never had to, it was never an issue, Weird people out there with weird, there's, you don't have to tell me. I've done some research on that subject in the sense that, you look on the internet and you type something and all of a sudden you see some guy with a machine that's sticking a dildo in and out of his ass. And then you see one for sale on eBay. You're just like, what the fuck? No, this can't be something people are wasting their time doing. Oh, but yeah, Yeah. It's anuses are interesting places, but I'm just saying they're, from my perspective, they're off limits just because of that whole poo thing. So yeah, you just, no, you don't mess with that place. Too pooey. But yeah, no. It is a weird world. Yeah, it does strain your imagination to try to imagine the people sometimes in, these conversations, and you're just like, what the, it's just, what is in the making? What is this thing? So that part is kind of funny. But I don't hurt my brain too much. I don't do too much of that. Imagining can get you in trouble. So, anyway, okay, so I think I should have left an hour ago, but I didn't, so, I have to make sure I got to do some rigid rule making, and it says that, you can only talk so much physics, and then your brain gets kind of tired, and so that's why I need somebody to keep provoking me to argue, because I really run out of argument gas. So that part of it is my fault. That's why sometimes playing the videos is a good idea, because then I can play the video and just point out, see, and I can maintain the argument. So I did play a couple of videos regarding the gravity thing, and what's heating the Earth, and all the physicists just say the same shit. They just repeat what the book says. And it's just, it is funny, just because I just don't know how people could not realize gravity must be making the Earth hot. How could it possibly be avoided under the circumstance? momentum, weight, pressure. How can they not get the heat part? Let's see. This world is a very sick place, especially. Yeah, it just is. I frankly see no. It's just you're just like saying, okay, I know things tend to go in the right direction and all that kind of stuff. People get smarter over time. We get more educated, more knowledge. But yeah, it really is getting all chaotic because of this quantum crap and all this wooey crap is all over the place. I mean, people are talking now, oh, they discovered life on Mars. Do you really think so? I mean, it's just, they're just so desperate for this bullshit. It's just really depressing. Anyway, yes, everything is memes. It really is just meme evolution. And you're just arguing that, the tendency, though, is for the memes to get smarter. We abolish slavery, then we abolish white only, and then we figure out, we figure out this fairness thing. We try to be more genteel and civilized. And, we're just going all the ground we gained, we're just backsliding into a toilet. But wouldn't it be cool if we lived on Mars? No, I don't see how it would be cool at all. You live inside of a garbage can with a little window in it. That's your life. You're looking at your iPhone, watching movies on your iPhone, in a garbage can. Oh, yeah, wouldn't that be great? No. I just don't understand the ambition to go to a wasteland. And live in a garbage can in a wasteland. I just can't see that as much fun. Anyway, enough said, enough done. We will move on, and tomorrow's another day, and we'll see. I guess I'll probably have to do a kinetic energy version of these videos, then we'll go back to attacking dumbass Dave. So anyway, let's see, I gotta find the right thing here to get the hell out of here. Which one? Where is the get the hell out of here button? There it is. Okay, so till the next time and such, thanks for the participation, and try not to do anything stupid and all that kind of crap. Wish you luck, but is there some point to me wishing you luck? Yeah, no. It really won't help you be lucky.